announcements. You've probably already heard most of these today, but just a few reminders. One, we want to thank our headline sponsor, which is Hotel Map. I am going to encourage you to wear the headsets. When you are wearing them, you'll be able to hear much better. Couple of notes on these. If it is showing blue on the side, you're hearing me in English. If it's showing yellow on the side, you're hearing me in Spanish. If you want to switch that, there's a little white button on here that you can tap on and off, and it'll switch back and forth. Volume is also near that white button, so easy to use. We are using closed captioning through Interprify. That's over here on the screen to my left. You can also use their app to have closed captions in an alternative language, listen to live interpretations of each session, and there's a QR code somewhere on the screen behind me that you can scan for that. And then we are going to be doing Q&A at the end, utilizing Poll Everywhere. So you can scan the QR code up here in the top right of the monitor, and you'll be able to submit your questions that way. All right, so our next session is the power of a platform, the strategic impact of unified technology solutions. I love the term unified technology, just saying, as somebody who produces a lot of events. And we have Brad Gillespie, the Vice President and General Manager at Cvent Consulting, as well as Brandon Wernley, Founder and CEO at BW Events. So please welcome them to the stage.
Can you guys hear us okay? Super. You want to go first?
Here. You guys, okay, fantastic.
All
right, yeah, just as was said, Brandon Wernley here, CEO of BW Events Tech. Just some background, we are event technologists, a team of roughly 200 people worldwide. We are platform agnostic and we look at the entire tech stack of a client, consult, architect, implement, and we also have some supplementary products that we'll share with you on how it's been implemented for tech stacks. Really excited to be here, very excited to be here with Brad, so looking forward to it.
And I'm Brad Gillespie. I'm with Cvent, and I lead our consulting division. We're a relatively new team at Cvent, about 4 years old. But we do similar things to what Brandon and BW Events does, working with our larger corporate customers on helping them get more value out of their Cvent investment is really our mission. Now that you know who we both work for, we were intentional in our discussion before our session. This is not going to be a commercial. This is not meant to promote either one of our organizations. It's really to talk about the concept of unification. Unification, think consolidation, think platform. We're going to use those simultaneously. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what we mean by a platform. Back when I was a customer of Event Tech, I used to say to the industry, you guys don't do a very good job explaining what a platform is. But now I'm on this side, I've got to do a better job of explaining what we mean by a platform. We're going to talk about both the, what I would think of as tactical advantages as well as the strategic advantages. And Brandon's going to be covering the opportunity to both standardize on a platform, but not be limited by a platform, to be able to extend and customize ultimately the attendee experience while also standardizing on technology. So that's what we're going to do today. So diving in, I wanted to start with a visual. This is what we really are going to talk through about what a platform should look like. A comprehensive set of capabilities that ideally is connected to other portions of the tech stack. Think systems of record for front office systems and back office systems. And to break this down a little bit more, if we're thinking about what a platform should deliver, and if you were to think about all the capabilities one would need to plan and execute any single event or a program or the entire portfolio of events that you have, you need a certain set of capabilities. A platform strategy should have a critical mass of those capabilities. It should have enough of the things that you need to do across that life cycle to have the opportunity to pick one supplier to provide all of that capability to you. You also have the opportunity to select individual products. For example, you can buy individual point solutions. We might use that term a little bit for venue sourcing and registration and lead capture and the like. So that's a second option that buyers have today. And then a third option is what we might think of as a product suite, some combination of capabilities that are packaged together. So one vendor can give you maybe not the entire platform, but a portion of that platform, something like all the capabilities you might need to deliver on-site. Is this mic static okay for everybody? Okay, it's out here. It's sound a little reverberating. Okay. So back to the platform. You'd want, in a platform strategy and a unification strategy and consolidating event tech, we'd obviously want all of those capabilities to come with what we are getting from that vendor. But more than just that, we also want the ability to build on top of the platform. Good. Other industries, the way they define a platform is really more like this. I'm going to provide a standard upon which you can build on top of. Not until very recently has the event tech ecosystem started to get into this direction. Usually had to make one decision: can that provider do what I need it to do or not? And what came out of the box was your limitation. Today, with a platform approach, and what Brandon's going to get into in a little bit, is the opportunity to not only customize any one of those applications down at the feature level, but also build new applications on top of the platform. So we would want all of that in our platform strategy, but we would also want a very robust back end of the platform to manage access through single sign-on. We want to have all of the data stored consistently and available. We want to have web services for interoperability. We want to have APIs to make all the right connections. And we want to have a SDK, or software development kit, that would let others build on top of the platform. So we would want a robust back end in our platform strategy to unify. We would also want to have a very flexible front end. We want to have dynamic presentation of content available in multiple languages. We would want both a web and a mobile and an on-site experience, and we want all of that to be available through the platform. We would also want to have a comprehensive support model and have all of the training and resources and options for support available via the same platform. Last but not least, we would expect the platform to have a very active ecosystem, an ecosystem of customers as well as partners. And in event tech, that means technology partners, but it also means venue partners, and it also means services partners. So we're gonna talk about that next. So when we're talking about a platform, it's not just the technology, it's everything else that really a platform unification strategy should be able to deliver to your organization.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. And going back to what Brad was talking about as it relates to utilizing the partners in the ecosystem, for a lot of the solutions that are out there, if you're going the platform approach where it's as all-inclusive as you can, a lot of these platforms, they can't focus entirely on customizing off of every single request that comes in. You probably have seen that before. They've got product roadmaps. You can only do so much, and they've got to compare that with a priority list with all their other customers. So there's got to be another solution for that. But there's so many benefits around scaling the tech stack across not just one event, but all of the events in a portfolio. There's economic benefits, there's savings as it relates to connecting with the tech stack, which will, there we go. And so fewer vendors to manage. You guys have been in that situation, I'm sure, before, where if you get too many heads in conversation, there's going to be some sort of drop in communication. So we're trying to avoid that. Standards for UX and workflow. One of the challenges of a lot of the clients that we work with is that their event teams aren't talking to each other. So there's not cross-event learnings. And one team will trip up over themselves and not tell the other team. But also on the positive, all the great innovations that's happening, one event that's happening in the spring should be a learning point for the other event that's happening in the summer as well. But also support more stakeholders, more buying power, and so forth. There are so many efficiencies. We've actually seen that there's been some customers of ours that when standardizing their tech stack, have actually saved over millions of dollars just on licensing because there's always redundancies that end up getting corrected. So
These are all super important. The data side, we're going to talk about more at the end. Obviously, standardizing on fewer technologies lets you think about data consistently across an entire portfolio and come up with some common ways that you want to think about performance and metrics and KPIs consistently.
So as part of this ecosystem, like I was mentioning, the partners, they can be there to come in and to understand, take a step back, and let's go to the next slide. If we've got a platform or a set of platforms that are versatile, there's a lot that we can do in order to address the client use case. Some of which, as Brad was mentioning, APIs, SDKs, and dynamic front end. If you've got those three pillars in your tech stack, you've got almost, I wouldn't say unlimited flexibility, but the flexibility is extremely robust. So that if there is a gap in functionality, you can take an SDK and build new functionality into it. So in other words, how this could look is that if networking is not up to par, new features could be added on top of it. The APIs, you can bring out data, and we'll show some examples here in a moment of how you could orchestrate the data in such a way to create hyper-personalization. But if you were to go to the platform provider and say, hey, I would like an AI-driven hyper-personalization approach, they'd look at you and say, okay, let me check with our product team. We'll get back to you in about 10 months, at best case, right? And so, so here's an approach that partners can conduct with the client in order to make this all work. First, we try to understand what is the strategy behind the event or the event portfolio. What are the KPIs? Is this a revenue generating event? What are you trying to do here? Are you trying to increase networking or drive towards specific demos for the sake of buying product? Is this an HR event? What is going on? From there, it's important to then document all of the requirements for an event. Again, the context here that we're talking about is we're aligning the right tech stack, okay? I just want to remind you. Let's document the event requirements and prioritize those things from highest priority to lowest. One of the challenges that we've seen, and you may have seen, is that you may have an executive that sees some cool event out there, and it's so flashy and all of the fun stuff that happens, but they haven't taken the time to document all of their event requirements, only to find that that flashy platform only handles 20% of all that they need to cover. They bring them in and they find out they're quite frustrated that they can't do everything they want to do, right? But if you've got everything documented carefully and you show the executive, hey, that is a great platform, but that only covers one slice of what Brad was talking about before. We've got a major part of the pie that we need to address. And if we're going to bring in other platforms, here's the good and the bad behind it. And so that's an important part of it. The matrix of functionality, we're going to show on the next slide what that looks like. And then we can prepare demos based on, okay, vendors, this is the prioritization list of what the end client is looking for. Let's make sure we hit on those things. And also ensure that there's flexible front end. So here's an example of what this could look like. You know, this is just kind of, you get the idea. These are fake functionalities, but you can kind of put your own use cases to this. You've got a particular event or an entire event portfolio. And as you're categorizing all of your requirements, you can put what's P0, P1 through P4 or whatever as a priority list, right? This gets everybody on the same page, but also helps you understand where are our gaps at this stage. What can we not address within the tech stack that we have for these particular events? Because if you're trying to show a vision that you can enhance the overall experience with greater innovation and take advantage of economies of scale, the leadership team is going to buy into this. They just got to figure out what are the gaps that you need to address. This will paint the picture for you. And so it really sets you up nicely. Okay, let's jump next. So, there we go. So again, remember, of all the features that you have to work with, the entire goal is what area, you've got to pick and choose your battles here. What areas do you need to bring in another vendor in order to play this role? Because it's just not robust enough within the tech stack. But let's try to minimize as many integrations as we need to at the same time. Anything else, Brad, that I'm missing on this slide? Okay.
No, I think this really sets up the idea and really the role that the right partner
Good point.
plays in helping you make first the selection. What features do I need? Does that feature deliver all the functionality I need? If so, terrific. If not, what's my opportunity to customize that?
Yep, perfect. Okay, so let's show you what this could look like just for a moment. Again, built on the foundation of you already know all the requirements, you know what the gaps are, you've got robust APIs, an SDK, and a flexible front end. Use case here is we had a client that essentially said, okay, we've got a problem. People are going to the keynote, but as soon as the keynote is done, we've got a massive drop-off rate where people are signing off. It was a hybrid event, by the way. People are signing off and they're not attending the breakout sessions. And so they had reasons why, obviously, these attendees needed to attend the breakout sessions so that they could get revenue and demos and the various KPIs that they were measuring. But this was the issue that they were having. And the current platform that was being utilized didn't have engagement that kept the attendees on the platform. So there was a gap that we discerned, right? So what ended up happening because of flexible SDK is we ended up building based on our awareness of the audience. This was an accounting event, and the audience happened to be of an age group who, as a child, they played old nostalgic games like Tetris, Space Invaders, and Snake, okay? We embedded this into the event platform. Side note, the data didn't have to go off platform because we leveraged the current platform's APIs. All of the files that created this were hosted on the core platform. And so it mitigated any info security review issues, right? And suddenly what was happening is keynote ends, a push notification went out, people were directed to Space Invaders and Tetris and Snake, and the leaderboard was being lit up with people competing with each other. And someone was bragging and they changed their name on the leaderboard to say that my 5-year-old is the one that's beating you, haha, you know. And so it became a big talking point, but the key to this whole thing was from a KPI standpoint, it increased, it increased leads, because that was the other issue, is that we actually included the sponsorship, or the sponsors in there. Increased sponsorship leads by 800%, but more importantly is that 70% uptick in total retention of the attendees during the show. All because of some simple thing just like this. All because there were flexible APIs and SDK, that kind of thing. And the platform we were working with didn't have to create this from their product roadmap. You see how that plays out? So let's go for the next one. This is just another example. I'm just going to take 10 seconds. Leaderboards. You can create leaderboards because you've got strong APIs. You can utilize analytics, see how attendees are playing out through the life of the event, and showcase who's doing what. This is really good for SKOs, by the way. Getting salespeople in competition with one another, it's like an atomic bomb. And then another one here. Just to touch on this is an AI example. And so, again, if there's a good data strategy within the tech stack, what you can do is utilize the APIs, connect it to the right AI algorithm, create an embeddable set of carousels just like Netflix, because obviously, as you may have heard the talking points, in our own personal consumer lives, we're consuming YouTube and Netflix, and there's a certain way in which these tools have learned to interact with us, and we're used to it. So why aren't we doing the same thing for events? And so instead of trying to force this concept down the throat of your platform providers in the tech stack, build on top of it, and you can have, okay, welcome, Joel. Here are some sessions that we would like you to attend based on the last demo that you attended. And here are some sponsors based on the last behavior that was manifested. Here are some people to network with, and so on and so forth. You can obviously create a journey then, if this was some sort of revenue generating event, where a sales team can look at the behaviors of their top accounts and say, okay, then recommend this demo because that will be suggestive of a very high propensity to buy our company products. So let's guide the AI algorithm that way. SaaS platforms are not built to be so nimble. It's nice to have that layer on top where you can do that and create those solutions for yourself. So, and you can see, are you watching that, as Brad is moving this along, it's touching on various segments of your tech stack, but not everything, right? This is another example, avatar builder. It was just for fun. We can keep going. Let's see. Emoji overlays. There was also survey overlays. There was one client that suggested, hey, we're not getting good survey response rates. Is there something simple we can do? So that the thought was, hey, with the flexible front end, some of the APIs, because you're going to want some data out of this, let's create an overlay on the video player itself so that it's very simple. You don't have to go finding the surveys. They click on it. Survey response rates, what was it, 250% increase across the board at the event as a result. Okay. But again, the goal or the point of all this is flexibility. Is, okay, let's solution find and let's utilize these methods. And I think perhaps lastly, networking tool. It doesn't matter what your platform is. If they already have a networking tool, you can either augment it or you can just pull it out and plug it back in. And the thing is that could come across as, hey, I don't know how that platform, let's say it's a Cvent or Rainfocus or so on and so forth, is going to like that. Well, the thing is you also don't want the client to feel tempted to throw out much of the platforms in the tech stack because of this one feature. So let's just pull out that one feature and plug it in with something more robust if necessary. And then we don't have to do a clean sweep of the rest of the tech stack, again, because of one feature, and everybody's happy. So.
You have a bunch of these, don't you?
I do. You guys get the point, don't you? So I won't belabor this, but calendar syncs and so on, all of these are driving and moving KPIs for the clients. Certification widgets, same concept. Having a ticker confirming that as a result of attending 5 or 6 different sessions, either on-site or virtually, you are 80% done with your certificate, and then eventually automated, you'll have a certificate show up for you. Yeah.
So hopefully you're getting the message. I suspect you are. And also that we haven't talked much about Cvent's platform versus others. This is really applicable to lots of different options that buyers have today to realize those benefits that we've talked about, as well as what Brandon just covered. If there's missing functionality in the platform, the right partner comes into play to fill that gap, to reduce some of the supplier risk that might be associated with picking one platform, and where there might be less flexibility in the platform, to extending that flexibility. Let me make this point. In a unification strategy, in a consolidation strategy, there should always be room to make a product decision where there's an exceptional product, many of which are on this show floor today, that uniquely solves a functionality gap problem. This can also be part of your unification strategy. I would suggest arguing for a platform strategy that is the exception, not the rule. Don't piece together a platform, but there should always be room in your strategy to pick the product that executes on a problem exceptionally. And I'm saying that as the platform provider here. So buyers need to incorporate that into their thinking as well.
Yeah, and there's some strategic advantages behind this concept. I mean, if you've got that unified tech stack, think about what you could do with the data behind it and the synergies behind the data, all of the use cases that you can leverage with the data itself, the synergies behind the teams, the systems. A lot of these tech stacks you're going to have to funnel into a Salesforce, a Eloqua, a Marketo. Don't have 50 touch points to send data to. Try to have a pivot platform or set of platforms around that. Simplify it. There's a cost savings. There's so many different benefits around this.
So deeper integrations, deeper alignment. The marketing channel should be more deeply integrated into all other channels. That integrates stakeholders across teams, which is always a good thing.
And then at the end of the day, the people that win out is both the administrator as well as the attendee. The attendee is going to have a more seamless experience, a more simplified experience, And one of the things that we've noticed just recently is we could unify our contingency planning for a whole series of events because they're utilizing a unified set of platforms. And so we knew exactly what the contingency plan was, what the communication plan was around, within the contingency plan. So many aspects get streamlined as a result.
Last strategic advantage, as I think about the organizations that we've had a chance to work with, different parts of the program have very different ways that performance is measured. And this common approach to data across a portfolio should allow us all to have a very consistent way we think about goals, objectives, metrics, KPIs, so we can elevate the visibility of performance from any one event to a program level and ultimately to the entire event portfolio. Let's talk about really quickly to wind down. If you are entertaining an idea of a unification consolidation strategy, what are some key things to keep in mind?
And how does your program support corporate objectives today is one question that we wanted to ask.
Yep. And how much of the event program do you currently support? The more of the program you support, I might suggest the more you would benefit from a platform strategy. If you're only supporting a small portion of a program, you may not get the full benefit of standardizing that you might if you supported the entire program.
Who are the current stakeholders of the program? Massively important, because you might be writing up a lot of these matrices and you're not talking to the right people and you're going to have to redo it pretty quickly. But you also need to know where the KPIs are coming from. Who are the decision makers in this whole equation?
And a quick comment on this. Other industries outside of event tech, I think, do a better job of partnering with IT. IT should be a stakeholder, really needs to be a stakeholder in a portfolio program strategy. So if you don't have a relationship with IT, super important in this approach. And then lastly, what does your current organization look like? Can you take this on? Do you have the skill sets? Do you have the capacity? And ultimately, how much do you intend to be software users versus outsourcing some of the actual technology use? A platform strategy, a unification strategy, really depends on you wanting to be more of a software user at the end of the day as opposed to not. So hopefully we made our case in a way that is objective and independent and leaving plenty of room for the many terrific product providers that are here today and in our industry to be a part of that strategy. Do we have time for questions?
What is the biggest mistake event professionals make when selecting event tech? That's a great question. I'm gonna throw out a couple of thoughts on this, and just going back to this is one of the mistakes made is referring to the matrix. It's the assumption that if everybody else is using it, it therefore fits my objectives and my use cases, and you haven't taken the time to prioritize and document your own use cases across the entire either event or portfolio. And so there does come some surprises. I think part two to that is, as was mentioned, like the prioritization of those requirements is a helpful formula to hand over to the partners so that they are the ones providing you the demos that focus on what is the hottest priority for you. Otherwise, they're just going to give you a generic, great sales pitch, and you're going to miss a lot of the details during the process. And then you're set up with the wrong one. I'm going to add, one more is obviously part of the premise of this conversation is it lacks the APIs or the flexible front end to give you the flexibility, because there is not a single solution that's going to solve all your problems. It just doesn't exist. But what you can set yourself up for is the flexibility to pivot when those aha moments arise, and there's no way you could have been thorough enough to address that all. And so I think that's one of the key points for this message.
Since our friend Julius asked that question, I have to also add, the pandemic, remember, created this entire industry of virtual events and some meteoric rises in specific companies. And so short-term thinking versus having the opportunity to think a little more long-term, everybody picked a virtual platform.
Yeah.
Only to have to figure out, do I undo that now? Do I keep it? How do I keep it? How do I undo it? And so being able to hit pause and have both a short-term strategy, how do I solve the immediate, while also having a long-term strategy in mind. Super important.
There's another good question on here. How do we scroll this guy up? I think I'll be able to articulate this. Does somebody have access to this? On the initial matrix, do you find clients struggle to put together the comprehensive view of their current state? Yeah, absolutely. It's helpful to have a partner that is seeing a lot of events over the course of an industry and can kind of guide that conversation a bit, because there are some occasions where people don't know what they don't know, and it's helpful to think through the whole work stream with them, to ask the right questions and to kind of sort that out. Maybe give them some examples of what a proper tech stack looks like with the right questions. So it does help to kind of guide that conversation. Don't just throw over a document and have them fill it out.
Any other questions?
Joel?
Yeah, so.
Repeat it.
Yeah. The question was, what do you mean by software users? So many event tech products, many event tech platforms can be used by employees, W-2 employees with very specific assigned roles that attach to their day job. How does this tool support my day job as a piece of software, just like any other tool that we would select? The opposite side of that spectrum, especially for a large conference that you might produce once a year, is it may not make sense to educate and train up an entire team on a tool that you use one time a year. And so there's a big spread of the opportunity to adopt software with those two things in mind. We would advocate for you need to have some level of internal capability to use the software. A platform strategy is really about investing more in that. We have a client that made a big switch via a platform strategy, and it realized it didn't have the role or the skill set in place to really benefit from that decision. So what did they do? They created a role description with events in mind and hired 30 individuals to fill that role because that was the right strategy for them. And they were going to come in with the intention of owning the system and being like power users for the most part of the entire platform. Does that make sense? Yeah. Good question. Are we out of time? We're not? Anybody else have a question? Was this helpful? Good. Instant feedback.
And we could have a square off on Tetris if you guys wanted to after this. In fact, that probably should have been an intermission point with this. And anyway.
I'm looking around at a bunch of really good products, by the way.
Yeah.
So that wasn't in there just gratuitously because I have a lot of people staring at me. You really do need to leave room for picking the right one of these if your problem is so unique and these products uniquely fill it. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you.